going to take education, brand new, and that's a whole operational structure, you know. So, I mean, that's where I can see building the product teams around our different marketing efforts, you know, as soon as we're ready to launch this, because, I mean, when we start the dev project, because we got to start planning them separately.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay.
We can use actually some of that stuff.
The risks during this would be the foray into connecting to CoreLogic API. And while we've done, I've looked, you can sign up, you can purchase it, until you actually start coding against an API and seeing how it's going to all work and come back, there could be a risk. I'm not saying that, obviously they're a professional company and all this sort of stuff. I'm just highlighting that it could be a risk because I've seen it to where, hey, I can't get this data that I thought I was going to be able to get, because they don't provide it or something.
And actually, beyond CoreLogic, there's another one we're going to be location service.
There's a third one that Fidelity, it's called Black Knight, Fidelity Information Services owns, and there may be something, if there's more mutual benefit is discovered between Fidelity and us, then it may behoove us to. Either way, one thing I don't know the answer to would be, what kind of person can poke around in all three? You don't need to see, it's going to be two-dimensional data, like statistics and sales and numbers, which of these three programs has the most in-depth information, and then that's the one we.
You're going to need more than one. But for instance, CoreLogic has some data that location service does not have, but location services sells data to CoreLogic.
I want to see that. I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
It's just
in fact, that should be on the schedule.
Is it possible to use CoreLogic? You said Black Knight?
Black Knight.
Is it possible to use both of them to get all the information?
Yeah, when it comes to, it depends, because I don't know every single detail information, like me and Brian work on.
But who is it that, what person is it that we said, because that would be worth doing early. That's research to see, who is it that gets into the data and understands what's available.
Yeah, you'll see in the next steps that you're going to need a data scientist that's going to come in and ultimately help go through all your. Remember that thing we started with the work backwards? And I can show it as part of one of the deliverables. That work backwards saying, hey, I got to get to eventually an offer. And if you work backwards, what are all the variables that are at play? Whether it's questions from a questionnaire, it's data I pull from CoreLogic, data I pull from Black Knight or whatever, to ultimately get to that answer, right? And by doing that exercise, and we started doing an example of it, but it would tell you, okay, well, if I got to get this from somewhere, where am I getting it? And if I can't get it, then we'll know that risk has been highlighted or what do we do instead. But until we do that exercise of working backwards towards a calculation and highlighting all the data we need, now that we know all the individual data points and we have to ask the question, where can I get it from? Well, that's when we can go, okay, you said I need to go get this. Well, does CoreLogic have it? Yeah. Oh, you go, okay, check. And ultimately you're just going through this work backwards model going, okay, yeah, we were able to get every single data point to get the answer we needed, and we're good,
And if we can't get it somehow, then we have to.
And if you can't get it, you'll have to get clever at that point. And that's actually another.
And change the algorithm.
I know we can get it.
I know.
Find what Brian wants.
Yeah.
But we don't have to go to one place. The one thing I am certain of is we do not have to go to one place to get it, because I know other companies that pull their data from several different data sources. We don't have to just sign a contract with CoreLogic. There are places who buy data from several different places.
Yeah, so at this point, do you have a clear understanding of all the data elements that you need to arrive at a decision?
90%. So what I want to do after this is I want to hire an appraiser to consult with us on how they pull their information. I want to consult with whatever. I would like someone who has experience in other markets in the country, just to find out is there anything different about what's done at a very high level that we would need to build programmatically to prepare to be somewhere else. And then things like hiring inspector or contractors to come show how different ways to come up with rehab estimates. I just want to make sure we get true.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to rely on just my, because I do it one way, but it could be I don't
And
want
what's an industry standard? Because if we're using an industry standard, we're less likely to make a mistake.
Well, and then there's also things like the MLS, for instance, is on the back end is like everything like flooring type. It's got a specific way that they call what they call it, because it's multi-select. So realtors go in and they can, hardwood, travertine, laminate. Like we need to have the exact same words in ours so that it can read.
So there's three things you want to look at. What you just mentioned there, that's business information.
Okay.
That's business information. The next step is then taking the business information and looking at it from a data base. Right? And then the third part is then going to the source, asking yourself, okay, where are the sources I can go to get this information? And then the fourth step is gathering that information and then verifying if that information represents what you're looking
Exactly.
for.
Right.
You have to validate that data. So that's the fourth step. And then, of course, the fifth step is then bringing in a developer who then can do something that's small. You can use like a REST API that you can make a call and then fetch that data back, provide a login or whatever it is, authentication, fetch that data back, say, okay, based on this information, this input I give, what they're giving me back, validate that that's the data that you're looking for and it works for you. So those are the 5 steps that you would need to do.
Okay, so say just the steps one more time.
Sure.
So business.
First is the business information.
Okay. Second is.
And next is the data representation of that business information.
Okay.
Okay. Third is data source.
Okay.
The fourth is data access.
Okay.
Fifth is data validation.
Which is why it's so important to build a decision model and offer calculator components to start in a rudimentary way, so that when we get to data validation, we have somewhere to stick it,
Yes.
so we can see how it works and how those need to be altered, because they probably will need to be altered, once we have the actual data. But right now, I want to be able to do it the way I know how to do it, just to make an improvement, and then we can make it better.
Yeah. That would possibly be a sixth step, meaning that you may have to massage the data. You may have to take two pieces based on date and value, and then come up with a true or false value or something, a derived value.
So, for instance, like we're going to down here in Texas, we pull the assessed value. It's closer to market, but in other places they don't do it as often. So if we start to expand to other places, we need to be able to.
We want to do better than tax value.
No, I know that, but
yeah, I get it.
I'm just using an example.
Okay.
Is it possible, because since we're taking this from different APIs and different data sources, is it possible to say, it's written this way on their end, but if we reach a blocker on our end, could we somehow create some kind of condition where if it has these type of characters, we'll translate it to look this way or fit into these fields on our end?
You can. There's multiple approaches that you can do. One is that you have your own database. Like whatever data you come across, you keep it as raw data. So that's your staging tables or staging area for that data. Because you can have it, you already paid for it, you might as well keep it for yourself. If that data changes often, then that's a different story. You may timestamp it. But once it comes over, what you can do is okay, based on this data, I need to translate it. There might be gap. You probably have to do some gap analysis and say, based on this data, we didn't need it in this form, or it's missing certain pieces. Then you go through another exercise of manipulating that raw data to fit what your business needs.
Okay.
That's one process.
We went through that exercise at Academy because you get vendor information from Nike, Reebok, Adidas, and they all have their information, their proprietary kind of labels.
Yeah.
We have to translate those labels so it can fit into our system and display a certain way.
That's one way of doing it, and that's usually the better way because you can timestamp because your data gets ruined over here somehow. You can backtrack and then reprocess it and rebuild that data. The other way that you can do it is just bring it on the fly. When it comes over, when you're pulling it, you massage it right there and you dump it into the database. It just depends on how.
Which is why you're telling me building that database is the thing we need
It's your
to start
foundation.
with. That's the foundation.
How
Okay.
you're going to store it.
Right.
And those are called ETLs, by the way, extract, transform, load.
Okay.
So you extract data from somewhere, transform it, iterate, and then load it into the thing. You might have 10 ETLs going from Nike, Reebok, and putting it
What's it called?
ETL. Yeah, and there's actually like software solutions that can do ETLs for you.
Okay.
But everything that Nick just said is absolutely true, and